Welcome to the second episode of Makers and Mentors in Conversation with series. Hopefully you'll have seen our first episode where I was joined by Gabrielle Appiah and Zoe Ellis-Moore, and we discussed the positive effect mentoring can have on people's entry and development within the industry, as well as the positive impact their experience can provide our communities with. In case you missed it, my name's Emma Foster. I'm a development director at Mount Anvil, and I've been in the industry for about 20 years now, and I'm the host of our In Conversation with series. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by two fantastic panellists, Sarah Hayford, founder of the Land Collective, and Manthri from Bright Network. So thank you both for joining me. How are you both, and how have things been during the pandemic?
Pretty good actually, really well. A little bit busy the last couple of months, but initially it was quite nice actually just getting some downtime, to be honest.
That's definitely one way of looking at it. Yeah, it's been okay. I really can't complain. I think for Bright Network, we're quite a small but very nimble organisation, so you just have to move with the times. And actually it's meant some quite exciting things in terms of scale and growth. So yeah.
Exciting. So today we'll be discussing why we need to attract young people into the industry and how they support our cities as we design and build new communities, and of course how mentoring and other things can help address supporting young people and fostering them as they grow. So in terms of where we begin, I guess, how do you guys think we can make the built environment more inclusive as an industry and a career choice for young people? So what should businesses like ours need to do to encourage young people into trades like design and planning?
After you.
I think kind of what we work on the Land Collective is actually trying to make the built environment a more attractive sector to begin with, and actually showing young people that the sector actually exists. Because it's kind of hard to break into a sector when you don't know that it's even there. Yeah. So we go to kind of a lot of colleges and universities, and we do events talking about the built environment, about the different factors within it. So everything from architecture, urban design, right up to quantity surveying, commercial surveying and things like that. So I think it's actually just showing people that it's around and that it's so large and so broad, and there's so many different things you can do within it. And I think that's one way kind of young people can actually break into the sector and learn more about it in the meantime. So that's kind of some of the work that we've been doing.
And do you feel that it's having an impact? Have you noticed?
Definitely. I mean, when we kind of first went into universities, because we started with my kind of, we went into my previous university, University of Nottingham, and the only built environment related course available was architecture at the time. So because I wanted to go into property, I thought, we can probably do like an event with the careers department. It'll be really, really good. It'll be like a nice way to kind of get more people talking. So when I did that, we saw kind of lots of people over the years that we kind of started going. More and more people students kind of started to turn their eyes towards property and other kind of sectors within the built environment, which is really, really exciting. Whereas before, when we kind of went to the events, most people only knew about architecture, and even then it's like people weren't even really sure about architecture either. So it was quite nice to kind of see young people turning towards different career paths across the sector, and more people curious about what a career in the built environment even meant. So it was really, really exciting.
Cool. And you, Annie?
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you've said. I think a huge part of it is brand awareness. So for employers to really showcase who they are, make the sector known, to almost band together as a collective to really ensure that as many young people are aware of opportunities. So that's one part. I think when it comes to Bright Network, and just speaking from experience with some of the employers that I've had the benefit of working with, their challenges seem to be not just about brand awareness, but also how do you get quality and diversity of candidates in. So it's levelling the playing field. You might have lots of individuals who are really interested in built environment, but are those people from social mobility groups? Are those people women? I think we can all say that getting more women into fields like the built environment is tough. So just something actually that comes to mind, in 2017 we launched a big survey to all of our members, and we asked them, what's the best but also the worst piece of careers advice you've ever been given. And one of our female members responded saying, was really interested in going into engineering, so civil engineering. And someone said to her, don't do that, you're not going to be strong enough to carry all the tools. And you just think, this is an extreme case, we have to knock the stereotypes, work on brand raising, and really think about how do we encourage those young people to do what they want to do.
Yeah, 100%. And I also kind of think that young people also kind of want to see themselves in companies and employers and things like that. So even things like kind of like messaging, kind of the faces that you show on social media and things like that, people want to be able to look at an employer and think, oh, I can be there in next year, or I can be there in 6 months and things like that. And quite often I think lots of employers kind of miss the mark sometimes, where students can maybe apply for their graduate schemes but they think, oh, I'm never going to get in, nobody looks like me there. When I went to an interview, I was spoken to in a certain way, things like that. So that's definitely something that more employers can take note of and try and say that there has to be more, what's the word, sorry?
Representation.
Yeah, there has to be more representation in the sector to kind of attract more young people in from various different backgrounds, so that people can actually feel included when they actually get in, and they don't just kind of come in and then leave kind of maybe a year or two later.
Sure. In our last discussion, we discussed women in the built environment, and it was felt that we need to disrupt gender stereotypes from primary school age to ensure that women see themselves as working in the environment and that all people had a role in the industry. Is this something you agree with? Because I think when I hear you talking about universities and careers fairs and things like that, totally get it, agree with it. But more and more as we've gone on this Makers and Mentors journey, we've realised that actually even kids as young as 4 start to develop those stereotypes. Yep. So have you guys got any experience of that?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of Bright Network, we operate solely in the undergrad and graduate space, but always up for doing more with schools. Without my Bright Network hat on, I used to be a teacher, secondary school. I think the challenge isn't just at secondary level, it starts at primary level. Yeah. And so many of my brilliant friends who are still teachers constantly say that you have to just start putting more effort into careers advice. Yeah. But then you think, where does that effort come from? Should it come from teachers? In all honesty, it probably needs to come from the employers themselves. So I'd be keen to, think about what more employers can be doing at that school level, or even, at the early part of the education level before it gets to university.
Yeah. I think 100% agree with you, but I also think that it's a real collective effort here as well. I think employers, teachers, parents have a big part to play in it as well. My dad, for example, he's always just been like, you could be the president of the US. I mean, I couldn't, but he was that kind of parent. He was like, you could do whatever you want. But I also had friends whose parents told them they couldn't do certain things as careers. So one of the things that we actually want to do at the Land Collective is actually start doing parents' evenings and inviting employers and different kind of young professionals out and to actually speak at these events, to actually tell parents about these careers and these sectors and that they exist, that they're viable, that they're really successful career paths to go on and things like that. So I think parents will also play a really big part, because I mean, between kind of school and home, you spend most of your time both as a kid, and those kind of experiences can really reflect kind of how you grow up and kind of what you kind of go into and things like that. I mean, some of my cousins, for example, their parents only saw engineering, law, medicine, no other options, that's it. So I think, introducing other kind of avenues is really, really important at a young age too.
And I think also specifically with Black, Asian and minority ethnic groups, because when you've mentioned medicine, engineering and law, you're pretty much speaking to most of my cousins as well. So I'm really feeling that.
I think it's something that we, Makers and Mentors has a number of strands, and one of them is about how we engage with schools, because we do a lot of engagement with schools through Section 106s and through what we do. And we've been really trying to show the plethora of careers that we have in our business to those schools, so offering them a day looking at marketing or a day looking at finance rather than just sort of construction and things like that. And actually the feedback that we've got, as you guys have said, is actually the parents are almost a little bit more of an issue, particularly in those sort of deprived neighbourhoods where there's quite a stereotype about if you work in construction, you work on a building site, you're not going to earn a huge amount of money. So we're starting to think about how we can inform not only the kids but also the parents as well, so I totally agree. So there are so many aspects to the built environment. So it can be a physical job, as we've talked about, or a desk job, or a combination of both. So we've got colleagues who've done quantity surveying through to geography, I did, politics, product design, even a few financial degrees and things like that. Do you think that the built environment is seen as an obvious career path, and how do you think we can address this?
I'd be keen to hear what you say first, because you mentioned going through a different route.
So I basically studied international relations and politics at uni, and then by kind of third year I was just like, this is so depressing, I cannot. So I decided to kind of go in a different way, and I actually started in the built environment through interior design, weirdly enough. So I was still in my third year, and I decided, I want to do interior design as like a diploma or something, and I'll kind of start there and kind of work my way through and see where I end up, kind of thing.
Just because you liked it?
Yeah, just because I liked it, and my dad also did it, so I kind of had that creative knack, and I didn't really know that was an itch I needed to scratch, and I'd realised that politics didn't have any creativity whatsoever. And so I kind of went that direction, and I feel like most of the people that I've met in the built environment, or even in property, because I ended up becoming a property surveyor, most people just fell into it, to be honest, like that I've spoken to. No, I don't think hardly anyone that I knew actually studied, for example, real estate and then went on to become actual surveyors. Most people did finance, or they did English or geography or something completely different, and then went into the built environment afterwards. So I think that's kind of a testament to what we were talking about earlier about making sure that this sector is a viable career path, that people know about it from quite early on. Because the people that I did meet who were keen to go into real estate and things like that directly, it's because their parents worked in it, or they had like a certain network or connection there. So I think that, with that being said, I kind of just fell into the built environment, to be honest, and I think a lot of people did, but I think there's still kind of room for improvement there, more people actually choosing it as a direct career entry path.
And out of interest, when you switched from politics to interior design, what was it that actually led you to interior design? Was there something specific? I'm just wondering what it was that sparked it.
I think it was honestly my dad, and I think I realised that because he liked to do lots of decorative stuff around our house, and he would always come up with these weird, wacky ideas of like ways to get things done and things, and I just thought, I'd like to do a bit of that and learn more about the professional side of things, and I wanted to do work experience with designers to see how that kind of went on. And I think eventually when I came towards the end of my diploma, I started freelancing at uni just to earn some money. So I started to offer interior design services to landlords in the university area, because the houses were all rubbish and they used to just fling stuff together, and it was just gross. Like, I mean, I'm sure you can remember back to uni, like how terrible the houses were and stuff like that. And that's kind of what I did to earn money. And then I did work experience with some designers, and then eventually when I did some shadowing with a designer, she was working on a development project for an estate, and I met one of the developers, and then he told me about commercial surveying and property, and then that's kind of how I weirdly segued way through, but that's kind of how I ended up there.
So you could kind of say it was down to network, because of the choices that your parents had made, because of your own drive and ambition. Like, seriously, to have a side hustle at uni is pretty impressive. And then to have like grow further. But I think that is probably the key thing. So when we look at some of our members joining us in first year they literally tick that they have no idea what they want to do, and that's fine, who still does. But I think in terms of making sure that we can position different opportunities to them, it's about, I suppose, letting them realise that you don't have to work in construction to be in property. You can come and check out a beautiful office like this and see the different roles you can do, but it's making it really visible. So thinking about some of those solutions, what do you think that we should be doing? Is it more trips for people to come and see the actual environments that they work in? Is it having conversations with senior female leaders who have made it through the ranks or have like done whatever degree but then transitioned into the built environment? What do you think?
I think for me, my dad actually did the same job as me, so definitely family connections, but I was offered an internship in America.
Okay.
And I went out there for 6 months, and I basically it was with a competitor of ours. And I basically worked in every department. So I started in land sourcing, I did the people team, I prepared a show home for launch, did the customer care team, and I had an amazing experience, apart from the fact it was in California, which is pretty cool anyway.
I keep thinking of like the OC.
Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking about.
It was in Orange County, which no one had heard of at the time, and now everyone goes, oh, the OC. But yeah, I had basically 2 weeks in each team, and so I really got that sort of level of knowledge as to what they do, which I was already I'd done a degree, was heading in to do a master's, so I already knew I wanted to be sort of land and planning side, but it stood me in great stead to understand in that depth of knowledge exactly what each team did.
Yeah.
So I think where we're looking at changing our work experience approach through Makers and Mentors is we're bringing in a cohort together, so they've got each other to bounce
So
off,
important.
but also enabling them to move through each of our different teams,
Yeah.
albeit in less than 2 weeks, but to move through each of the teams, so they actually get to experience it, to do a task, to sit with that team, to find out what they know,
Sure.
and what they do. And to me, that's the best way of getting people to know things.
Yeah, and that sounds like a great solution. I suppose for the people who, like both yourselves, have come from environments where you've seen those careers or degrees, but then often you get the candidates who will either get through the process but self-select out, oh, it's just not for me for whatever reason. Sadly, that tends to happen more with our lower socioeconomic groups or diverse demographics. So there's no kind of silver bullet solution here, but what can we be doing more to really engage those members or those individuals to get them to be thinking about careers in land? A really good example of this is I told someone I was going to be talking on the built environment, and one of my friends was like, what's the built environment?
Yeah.
And you just think, right, you should know this, or should they? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, we always we now talk about construction and development because a lot of people we found in the boroughs that we work in talk about construction and just associate that with biblical trades, and it's like, no, you can come work in our marketing team, you can work in our finance team, you can do anything, you know.
Exactly.
So that's what the whole Makers and Mentors programme is about, is showing that plethora of opportunities. So I guess I'd be really interested, Annie, in terms of your role is showcasing career opportunities, which sectors do actually get it right and why, and what can we learn from them to improve?
It's a great question, and I think I'm going to go with complete honesty here. So the sectors that do it really well are the sectors that allocate budget against really ensuring that they are targeting diverse demographics and supporting those candidates. So kind of thinking back to the data and the research, we know that 90% of our members think that it's an employer's responsibility to upskill them when they're at university. So if I was an employer, I would be doing everything I can to target those individuals and make sure that they're upskilled. It's less about the old situation of go to careers fairs and say, come work for me, because everyone's saying come work for me. So if you can give undergrads or people at school age more to upskill themselves and see a sector in a really positive environment, they tend to do well. And it is the finance institutions, it's the banks, it's the tech firms. So there's lots of competition. And like you said, you don't have to have studied a specific degree in built environment sector. You can do anything in transition like the both of you did. So you're just competing against lots and lots of other sectors.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I think that's really interesting as well, because I remember we did some research last summer. So we surveyed over 1,000 students across the UK, and we wanted to know what they basically thought about property in the built environment, and have they seen that presence from employers at their universities. Most people said no. But what they did say was that in comparison to kind of law, management consulting, finance, they knew nothing about the built environment really. They didn't know that there was property or real estate fairs at their university, even if these universities did actually host them. They didn't really know about them. They felt as though the employers across this sector didn't really make as much effort. So for example, some of the students mentioned things like some law firms would come over to the unis and do like dinners and actual events where people could actually come and sign up, just not only learn more about the law firm itself, but just more about the sector, how it works, how you kind of break in, if you weren't from a legal background, things like that. Whereas in the built environment, lots of companies didn't really do that, or they felt they didn't only make the effort, but they only went to universities that did built environment related courses, which is a big reason as to why lots of firms are only seeing certain types of candidates come in. They're not really giving the opportunity to other students who come from different degree backgrounds to actually break into that sector if they only go into one type of university. So there's lots of different things that we got from that research, but it was really, really interesting just to see people's perspectives on property, the built environment, things like their stigmas, stereotypes. First thing that came to mind when we mentioned kind of property, they thought development, they thought money laundering, they thought, most of them were quite negative actually, which was quite sad. And with construction, it was just men, hats, bricklaying, painting, getting hurt on site, things like that. So I think all of it kind of plays into each other, and I think as an industry we need to do more to kind of break down stigmas, stereotypes, go out to different universities, different colleges, target like different areas of the city or the different countries that we're actually going to and things like that, because when we actually broke it down further and we talked about, you know, like in your local area, for example, I just remember one girl we spoke to from Hackney, and she talked about how many developers were actually popping up in her area, building new apartments, houses, regenerating the area. She'd never seen any of them at her school or at her college, or do you know what I mean? So it's little things like that. Like, employers do need to make the effort, not just from an employability standpoint, but just from actually getting the word out there that we do actually care about the communities that we're actually building in, that we work in. And once you actually show that, people will be shown the sector more, and they'll be able to actually make those choices later on in life. Actually, I want to do what this guy did because he came to my school and talked to me about it, you know, things like that. So it's quite important to get engagement from all points and not just even think about it from just an employability standpoint as well.
And what you're talking about is almost the scale of it. So it's great to do an internship here or an insight day there, but how do you do that en masse, or how do you do it so that you're targeting as many people as you can? And this, you know, any firm that has an internship is great, even if it's for a few people. But something that we found that worked really well last year, having had to go virtual across COVID. So we launched a virtual internship that was completely and like, you know, no charges to take part in. It's completely free, as always, for the members to take part in. And we thought, okay, maybe we'll get around 10,000 people go through different streams, one of which was not built environment. So this goes to show that we need more employers to be thinking about doing these kinds of activities. But we had over 120,000 applications, and it just goes to show that there are undergrads, grads who really are desperate for this kind of experience, and you need to be able to give it to as many people rather than the 6 who've probably had uncles or aunts say, hey, why don't you try this internship? Or, you know, they've known one of their best mates' dads who works in the field. You need to get the people who would truly never have thought about it unless you put it in front of their faces. Yeah,
literally, because we did the same thing. Didn't get as many numbers, but we did the same thing for the built environment. So we had a commercial property pathway and we had a construction pathway. And for something that myself and the Land Collective team actually just kind of woke up and thought we have to do a virtual internship program. We got like a lot of bite on it, and it was really successful. And we're doing the same thing this year, albeit a little bit differently. Last year we partnered with a law firm, Brian Cave Leighton Paisner, Colliers International, and Gardner and Theobald. And it was a really fantastic scheme where students actually just got the opportunity to see what the built environment was actually about. So we did kind of little tasks and different kind of mimic scenarios, like what would you be doing as a graduate or as an intern and things like that. And it was really, really successful. And it's like you said, people really do need these opportunities. And especially when so many employers last year actually said, actually, we can't really afford to do internships this year, or we don't have the capacity or the online infrastructure to do so. So, you know, it is about kind of adapting and also seeing how you can reach the most people in a short amount of time.
So if we then start looking at, once you've started your career, so you've done your internship, you've figured out where you want to go, and we've attracted the people into the sector, how do you guys think we then retain them and keep them engaged? You know, what practical steps can we implement?
It's actually something that you mentioned earlier, Sarah, about having people start but then feel involved and included. So it's that inclusivity piece. So I think inclusivity plays a massive part in retention. So, you know, you could be 1 out of 10 and you're the only female starting, but it's about how that business makes you feel really supported and progression and development. Again, just kind of dipping back to the research, because it's where we get all of our source of data from our network. They know that a firm's people and culture is super important, as well as progression and development. Interestingly, remuneration isn't up there where you'd think it would be, but it's all about the, I think with Gen Z, they're looking at the softer skills, the support, and how they can grow their career. So I think that should be the foundation of what most firms should offer.
And when you say inclusion in terms of when they start, what sort of models have you seen work particularly well?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So whether it's thinking about, you know, not just the classic of, okay, well, we have an affinity group for this, but more strategic plans in place to really kind of shape and understand different demographics, different needs, accessibility, all of that builds quite a nice inclusion strategy. There's a fine line with being tokenistic and then really kind of thinking about the cohort that's starting and then how you develop them across the years. So what you mentioned previously, maybe mentorship is a part of that. Mentorship that doesn't necessarily have to come from a woman mentoring a woman, but it could be a senior white stakeholder mentoring a junior incoming black candidate. And I think that's where you get that real diversity of thought and probably a network where they might have not originally had that potential of meeting those types of individuals.
Yeah, we do that here now.
Great.
We've done it for the last couple of years, and we're actually very keen that the mentor, or the buddy as we call it, is from a different team. So you get an entirely different perspective. They're not at the same stage of the project as you guys.
There you go, inclusivity in practice.
I definitely agree with you there. And I also think it's about kind of like the small things that matter to people as well. For example, when we did the survey, quite a lot of students actually said that they don't drink anymore, or that they don't drink at all.
Yeah, we're finding that too.
And
like when I was in uni,
it's crazy. But it's just, for employers to actually take note of things like that and say, okay, for example, not make it a huge requirement like in the first week, maybe at the end of the week you have like an end of week, I don't know, networking thing or a party, and then everyone goes to the pub. But it's just like, that can be really uncomfortable for certain people, knowing that they have to go to fit in, and if they don't go, everyone's going to be like, that person is not really like joining in, or is not really networking with everybody, and that can make someone feel really, really excluded. So it's little things like that, and taking note of things like that, not just kind of religious differences, but cultural ones, or just personal decisions as well. And also making note of things such as people's kind of changing perspective on things. So for example, we found the research that lots of young people really care about commitment to like the environment, doing good by the environment. So, making sure that's a working practice and having that in your culture and the things that you do around the workplace. Different working groups is quite an obvious one, but actually making sure that those working groups aren't just there for show, and that you actually people can feel that they're actually making lasting change if they do join these things. So I think, it's really, really big inclusion at the moment, and quite a lot of people in the sector are talking about diversity, but more so the inclusion piece and actually keeping people around. Because, it's one thing, because we focus on the more early talent side of things, but we do kind of want to give our audience that kind of real and raw perspective on what it's like to actually work in the built environment by young professionals and people who have actually gone through it, different hurdles they may face, how to deal with them and things like that. And I think it's good to have people prepared, because I think quite often people aren't prepared for that kind of difficulty, and then they just think, do you know what, I'm going to sod this and go off to finance because the pay is better and there's more people like me, and things like that. But we do want to keep people in the built environment, and I think that it's the little things that people need to pay more attention to actually make people more comfortable and actually progress further in the sector.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because during COVID we launched the mentoring part of the Makers and Mentors programme in partnership with the GLA, and really that was to help harness relationships within the sector itself, but also to provide that support as people go on, potentially from different organisations. It doesn't have to be the same organisation. Do you guys think it's important, and how do you think young people react to that sort of mentoring approach?
I think young people would be really open to things like mentoring programs. I think they just need to know that they're there. Because, for example, Makers and Mentors, I found out about that by chance, actually, and now I'm actually part of it, but I'm actually a mentee, so I've actually got a mentor, despite kind of where I am in my life and everything, because I just think it's a brilliant programme. And
that is the aim of it, that it continues to pay forward.
You can always learn, and reverse mentoring is also a great thing too, but I think more young people just need to know that these things are out there. So whether it's literally going to schools or just posting like flyers or something through the letterbox to all the schools that you can, more young people just need to know that these things are out there, and they need to know kind of what's in it for them, because for some people they just may think, ew, careers, I'm like 14, what do I know, do you know what I mean? So it's more of a thing like, what else can they learn from that and pick up apart from maybe career knowledge? Maybe they can, learn about kind of things like finance, money management, how to get on a property ladder, things that, they may not be thinking about at that exact time, but that can still benefit them. And again, the parent piece, reaching out to parents as well, telling them, encouraging them to let their kids take part in these things is really important. But with most mentoring programs, I think that has been the main pitfall of them and why they're not as big and successful as they should be. It's just that marketing piece and actually getting that name out there, definitely.
I'm really interested to find out how you learnt about M&M.
I think it was LinkedIn,
LinkedIn.
I think it was LinkedIn, yeah. It was really cool.
Yeah, Sarah, I completely agree. I think it is the marketing piece. I think some of the employers that we work with to promote their programs, you have to market it really cleverly. So you're not just marketing it to everyone because you can't, you can't have the resource, but also you need to make sure that you're reaching those people who need it the most. We've actually launched our own mentoring scheme very recently, and it's been something that our members have been asking for constantly. And I think it's because when you're at that stage, you think, okay, next, I need a mentor. And sometimes you might just not even think about it and just think that's the next step. But where we've seen real success is, and if anyone is thinking of creating mentorship programs, it's have a structured program, don't let it be too long, make sure that there's a viable outcome at the end, because the mentorship programs that I've either been on, participated on or mentored on that maybe haven't gone quite as well is when you're just meeting up and there's no real rhythm to it. There's got to be that outcome at the end for both sides, so that you can really get something out of it.
Yeah. So if we think about why we need to make the built environment attractive to younger people as a career opportunity, and what opportunities young people provide to those already in the sector, I guess a good question might be, why do we need more young people involved in the built environment? What unlearned skills and experiences do they bring?
Yeah, I mean, young people aren't just cheap labour. They are innovative, they think outside the box, they bring a fresh perspective. So I think the investment should be made into early careers audiences to really get them into the sector earlier, if possible. But the reason is because, we want people to really think about the built environment as a viable sector. We don't want everyone to be a banker and a lawyer. We need those, but we also need people to consider other sectors. And when I say specifically people, it should be individuals that aren't just the same make and mould of one another. It has to be a real mix of thought, a real mix of diversity, which leads to that diversity of thought and caters for all the various different communities we have.
Yeah, I definitely agree there, and I think I'm just thinking back to when I spoke to one of our students in our network, and she was talking about how when she was in college, the college basically decided that they were going to overhaul the design and revamp everything basically. But the funny thing is that the students weren't involved in that at all. They kind of just designed that and just thought, yeah, here's what students want, lots of colours and all sorts of bells and whistles and all these weird things here. And students kind of came and they didn't really like it. They just thought it was a bit like, why didn't you ask, kind of thing. So I think whenever I think about kind of young people in the built environment, I always think about that, and I always think that for how much young people there are, they're often excluded from certain things, and especially when you're kind of building things like, just even generally to our cities, where they look, the way they feel, buildings, schools, I feel like everyone should have a say in that. And that's why we're doing quite a lot at the moment with actually trying to get more young people into planning consultations. So we're hoping to do that at the tail end of the year, but we want to basically encourage more young people to actually engage with their local community and go to planning consultations, even if it means that there's only like 4 people there, that they actually go, they get the experience, and they actually say, don't really like this plan, don't really like this development because X, Y, Z, and actually learn to build up that confidence. Because again, quite often they're just excluded, but they're going to be the people that also use that space. So it doesn't really make sense that, developers or, whoever only cares about kind of one kind of segment of people when it comes to building out a new space. So I think, it is the perspective piece. They can bring a fresh perspective. They can kind of bring new eyes and consider things that you've never even thought of before. So I do think having that diversity of thought and opinion is really, really important. And we need to encourage more of that the best way that we can, basically.
And they're your future consumers as well.
Yeah, I think we've seen a real shift in terms of attendance at consultations in the last year.
Great.
One of the blessings of COVID in some ways is that, you know, being forced to go digital and engage with these people very differently, I think has become more accessible to those sorts of age groups.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that's coming through this discussion for me is actually how much young people have changed from maybe what we were like when we were a bit younger. You know, we've talked about less drinking at uni, much more focus on sustainability. So maybe not assuming that we know what people think. There is a change there. So if we look at the challenges of developing people who are early in their career, how do they differ in large and small organisations, do you guys think?
I think there are some challenges that are quite similar. I think if you're a small organisation, you're really kind of developing and focusing on individuals, you can give them such a wide spectrum of opportunity. We have some grads come to us and say, the preference that I have on an organisation I'd like to work in is a small environment because XYZ, it's just better for me as a person. Whereas some people like to be part of a huge cohort, a huge movement. I did teach first, so I was part of hundreds, if not 1,000. But at the same time, you know, I can completely appreciate that sometimes when people join us as an organisation, there's such, it's more of a, you know, a small team environment to really kind of give them a full lay of the land, so to speak. But I think there's ways around both of those challenges. I think it's a lot about personality. And back to what you said at the start, Sarah, I think it's very much about brand raising. So if you are a small firm and you are trying to attract a grad, go by what you can use as your selling points. You know, is that best development in a way because you're so small, or is it more opportunity, work on a broader scale of things? Or if you're a huge firm, then maybe you've got a really cool client base and you can show off about that.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. I think it's all about kind of what you can actually offer. And I feel like more and more students, especially now, are looking towards the more smaller to medium-sized firms because they feel like they can develop not only quicker, but learn a broad range of things because they may have to wear different hats and things like that. And I feel like in an ever-changing kind of job market, that's really, really important to kind of know a few different things rather than just kind of go one path and learn one thing and then that's it. And I also think kind of maybe with the kind of small versus large organisations, sometimes it's very, very easy to feel overlooked when you're part of a large kind of organisation because there's so many people that you have to answer to, and then they have to answer someone else, and they have to answer someone else. Whereas in a smaller company, it may just be like, okay, maybe there's two kind of separate people above you and kind of that's it. So I think with that, large firms do have to make a bit more of an effort to actually start attracting more kind of graduates and talent now, just because people are leaning more towards smaller companies and people that actually are active in communities and people, companies and organisations that actually have local community things that they do, or maybe they give to certain charities, or, it's the smaller things, that maybe didn't matter maybe 10 to 15 years ago, but now they come to the forefront because of the pandemic and because of the way the world is changing. So I think it's all about kind of making a difference and how you can actually communicate that to people that you're trying to attract, because the certain things like a big salary just doesn't really matter but it's not as important anymore. It's not enough to kind of lure people in anymore. So I think firms need to kind of do better in that regard and see what they can do.
In terms of looking at large and small organisations, I guess from my point of view, I think it really depends on the personality. I think sometimes in large organisations, by virtue of it being large, there's more chances to take that step up if it's that title and that progression that you want. Or if you see progression as you guys were saying, in terms of sort of diversity of the work that you get to do and the ability to look at a whole host of different things that maybe aren't in that more narrow path. Do you think that's right, or do you think that there's other benefits as well?
Yeah, no, I think you're completely right. I think there's just one other thing with small organisations. If people think, oh great, I can really make my mark, yes, but you also really won't be invisible. You will be totally visible, and there will be far more steeper learning curve. And I think what you kind of spoke about was, doing that stretch of time, developing. There's a great book out there that we've had at Bright Network, and I think it's The Alliance by Reid Hoffman, and it is excellent because he talks about doing your tours of duty. So you might be somewhere for a couple of years, and like lots of undergrads now, or grads should I say, they have portfolio careers, so they're developing, moving. It's not about having someone and then trapping them there for like years and years. It's about getting what you can from that employee, making sure you develop them, and then seeing what they can give back. Or if it's time to leave, then it's time to leave, and that's okay. Yeah. But yeah, I think there's often quite a struggle of, oh, I must retain everyone. But actually, if you've come to the end of that tour of duty, then that is the time.
Then, that's right. I think we spend an awful lot of time recruiting people into our business. We have a very strong culture, and we really want to make sure that whoever comes into the business is a cultural fit, and that we're going to set them up to succeed as well. So our recruitment process is exceptionally vigorous and takes a long time, but I think it gets us to the point where when we've invested the time in choosing the right person, that person has chosen to come to us, then we know that they're going to be set up to succeed here. And we then hopefully give them the tools in order to see that success right from day one. And we actually do something fairly radical. We offer them a payment to leave after 3 months.
Okay, so if you're not the right for us, then that's okay.
But not our choice, their choice.
Yeah.
So if we haven't fit, if we haven't met your expectations, no hard feelings. Here's an extra bonus payment, off you go.
Yeah.
And I think we've only, I don't even know the stats, but it's very, very low. Sort of 1 or 2 people have taken it up.
But even if they have, probably the best outcome in the long run.
Which is the philosophy behind it. I remember when it was first floated to me, I was like, sorry, what? We're going to change all this?
We're going to pay people to leave.
Yeah, we're going to pay people. But yeah, absolutely agree with it. Some people, it just wasn't the place for them, which is great. It's a good recognition from both sides.
Definitely.
Really.
I've got one question though. You mentioned that the process is really long. The only reason I ask this is because having long processes really comes out as a theme in the research about how it really puts people off. Yeah. So I can understand the other way, like, you know, if you've stuck with us, you've gone through the process, you're clearly right. But do you ever find that you're seeing maybe a bit more of a drop off because of that length, or?
When I say long, I've been a little disingenuous. So we sort of have 3 separate stages. So we have an initial chat, get to know people, and then 2 formal stages really. Both interviews are 2 hours long.
Okay, right.
One of the interviews is on their CV. And I remember when someone said to me, you're going to spend 2 hours with this person talking about their CV, everything from college and uni all the way through to their latest thing. And I was like, really? But it is phenomenal, the amount of information and experience that you get out of doing it. And it's very structured. There are 5 key questions, all really simple stuff. Nothing intended to catch anyone out. Yeah. But from reading it and from doing sort of a more standard interview that maybe we did in the past, you just didn't get that depth of experience. Yeah. And when we're looking so strongly for someone that not only has the experience but has the cultural fit, that level of information we found has been invaluable.
And just the conversation, I suppose, it comes out.
It is a conversation. It doesn't feel like an interview, or it doesn't on my side anyway. But I think our success rate speaks for itself. And one of the reasons we've done it like this is to remove any bias as well. Yeah. So we make sure that we are asking the same questions of all the candidates that are going for the same roles. And then probably to answer your question in terms of people dropping off, we're really, really clear that this is our process.
That's so important.
And then we say, we try and fit everybody into sort of a 2-week period. We've just run a recruitment process for some roles in my team, and we interviewed 10 people twice over 2 weeks, which was a huge time commitment from the team, but absolutely right in terms of finding people that will fit and that will thrive here. We try and do it quickly.
Yeah, but 2 weeks isn't that long. I think you meant long.
No. It's more than sort of 2 hours and then another 2 hours.
That sounds slick.
Yeah. So you mentioned you're a mentee. Have you thought of signing up as a mentor as well?
Probably eventually, maybe. But I think at the moment I'm just kind of reveling in learning from somebody else as well. And I think because I started off as a founder, and now I'm a CEO, we've got a board now and things like that. I really think I could learn a lot from leaders in the field as well. Sure. Just about things like, how to handle recruitment and how to manage people and different things like that. And I also think I can potentially help them. Maybe they can learn something from me, hopefully.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's been a really cool experience so far. And I'm really glad that I found out about it and that I signed up, because I do think there needs to be more things like this out there where you do have the opportunity to just learn from somebody else and chat with them and have kind of like a safe place. because quite often many people don't know how to form those kinds of relationships organically. So when you can do it in a scheme like this, it's really, really helpful.
Yeah, that was the sort of basic premise behind it, was we did a number of focus groups on everything from school stuff to apprenticeships to work placements. And this was mentoring was identified as sort of the biggest gap that there was, and the question wasn't so much having a mentoring relationship, it was that initial ask. It was sort of working the courage up to kind of go, will you be my mentor, please?
Yeah.
So that was our aim with it, was just to signpost, if you do want a mentor, these guys are here and willing and able. And I've had quite a few guys in the office kind of go, well, I'm late 20s, I can't really mentor anyone yet. It's like, yeah, you can.
Yeah,
You've got a huge amount of experience that you can share with people coming through. What about you?
Yeah, no, I think in terms of mentoring and being a mentee, I'm constantly a mentee, always getting lots of mentors to help me. I think in terms of the question, could you just repeat what you wanted me to say?
So, are you keen to be a mentor or a mentee, which you already are? Right. And what do you think it would do for you personally or for others that you might mentor?
Yeah, always keen to be a mentor where time permits. I think it's really important that people take on the role of a mentor with appropriate time that they can dedicate to it, and being a mentee, very much the same. But in terms of what it can bring, I just think there's so much. Like it's a close and in-depth look at either a career, a sector, opportunities, how to deal with situations. You talked about how to manage people. I don't think there's ever a point where you stop learning. And even when you think, okay, I've definitely mastered that. Nope, you haven't. You've got to still learn more. Yeah. So I think there's so much valid use for it, especially when you can get pushed outside of your comfort zone. So really thinking about taking a challenge, working with a mentor to solve it. Yeah.
And then finally, say a business is struggling to recruit young people. What do you guys think we can do to get them through the door and onto reliable, enjoyable career paths?
Well, I think the first step would be actually talking to them. First, actually making the effort to go out there, put yourself out there, schools, colleges, universities. And I mean, I know that lots of companies and employees in the built environment have gone to schools and maybe haven't quite seen the different outcome, but you do have to get a little bit creative, like every year there's so many things that change with young people, from the things that they prioritise and care about, to the kind of like how they think, what they like to do, what they don't like to do, and things like that. The way they learn as well was a big key factor. I mean, lots of people that we found have actually, put the idea of going to university aside. They want to maybe go into work directly, and how can you actually resonate with those people that don't really want to study anything but want to enter the sector directly and things like that. So I think the first step is actually talking to them or partnering with organisations like the Land Collective, like Bright Network, who kind of have a really good focus with young people and actually learning from research, insights and things like that we actually provide, and then making the right moves from there, because I think some companies actually go into this pretty blindly sometimes, and then they end up not seeing maybe the returns they wanted. And I think you do have to be really strategic about this and actually, either partner with organisations or think about how you're going to do it over a kind of maybe 3 to 5 years or even longer and things like that. But I think just because of the way things are changing so rapidly, it is really important that you actually just talk to them, find out what they actually like, dislike, prioritise, find important about life and how they want to live out their careers. I think that's really, really important.
Do you see there being any impact in terms of all of this return to work discussion that's now happening? And it seems a much greater approach to flexibility. Do you think that will be something that will attract young people into work as a whole? I mean, not just into the built environment.
Oh, definitely. I mean, because when we did a survey not too long ago, and we asked them about the whole flex working thing, and most people actually said they would prefer to enter a company that had a flexible working scheme, where maybe it was kind of like a hybrid. You had the choice of maybe doing maybe 1 or 2 days at home and then a few days in the office, because I think young people, even though they kind of see where things are going, they do understand that you are going to get lots from the office environment. You are going to learn a lot more from having kind of seniors around, members of staff who can actually train you properly and things like that. So they do understand that's still important, but they just want more flexibility there. And I think one thing that I always go back to is, because I'm 26 now, my parents, they were the kind of people that, you know, they entered a career, they entered a job, they'll be there for 25 years. My mum is semi-retired now, but she was in the NHS for about 25 years.
Wow.
And she's just come out of it now, and she's just like, doesn't know what to do with her life. She's just like, I'm just chilling, like, I'm at home, she's on her bed watching YouTube all day, she thinks it's great. And I kind of saw that when I was younger. I thought, I do not want to do that. I do not want to be in one place for 25 years. And, you know, it's really stressful, desk job, 9 to 5, come home. Yeah, do you know what I mean? I didn't want that kind of life. So I feel like constantly we're kind of seeing our parents and people that we love and the way they lived their life, the way they worked. And then we're just like, don't want that. I want this instead. So I think it's also understanding that generational change as well.
Yeah, certainly an argument I have with my dad.
Yeah, so I think on the second question to do with remote working, so it's almost a case of be careful what you wish for. Our members always said, really want remote life, really want really strong work-life balance, which everyone should want and should get. But now that we've gone into COVID, we're having such a flip on that that kind of survey response where lots of people are like, get me back to the office. I want to be in a team where I'm surrounded by people, where we have, I don't know, a ping pong table, or there's, you know, tea and cake and a chance to socialise, because people are so starved of it. So I think what you've said, Sarah, is absolutely important. It does have to be a hybrid. But then if you look at it from a remote accessibility point of view, if you do enable your teams to recruit people from outside of the locality by your office, then let's face it, we've got such a rich pool of talent in and around London, but there are so many cold spots across the UK with students who come from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, may have not seen these opportunities, but now can work from those locations. So by enabling you to be remote, you can also enable access. And so hopefully lots of firms will continue the culture in a hybrid way. And then to answer your other question, absolutely second you again, Sarah. If employers want to connect with young people, obviously just work with us too. And collect the right network. So.
Thank you, Annie, for joining me. Thank you, Sarah, for joining me. It's been really good fun.
Yeah, thanks.